What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you for tuning in. This is Chat 3 of Best Served Fireside, which is our collaboration with Fireside at 5. Gabby is here and will tell us a little bit about that platform in just a bit. We're really delving in through this 5-part series of something we call the Paragon Pillars, 2 outcome goals that we have for the restaurant industry to hopefully create a more equitable, profitable, and sustainable business model for the restaurant world. Those 2, one, we really focused on to start was to get to a place of 75% employee retention and satisfaction. And we know when 73% turnover rate is the industry norm, we have a massive mountain to climb. Yet we think with some of the strategic thinking and the new models that we've seen playing out in some restaurants, there's an opportunity. The second is to get to a place at flow state, single unit operations, to be able to maintain a year-on-year average net profit of 19%. And again, industry standard, 7 to 8%. It seems like an impossibility, but what we believe is that if we understand the 112, 116, 132 line items in the P&L operating budgets of a restaurant and create stakeholders and partners versus the norm of vendors and being transactional, we think there's an opportunity to invest in different models that create that possibility. So that's what we're really focused on. Chat 3 now, we're really searching the supply chain. We want to focus on places in the supply chain that we have opportunities. I am not going to tell you this is the way that you do X, Y, and Z with your business. What I am very big on is asking questions, surrounding ourselves with very smart people like the panel we have here, and being able to find your own best practices. And with that, I want to introduce the panel here. Justin Brunson, executive chef of River Bear American Meats based in Denver, is here with us. Mike Calicrate, who's with Calicrate Cattle Company and Ranch Foods Direct based down in Colorado Springs. We have Ben Data with us, who's with Food Maven. And we have Christopher Wells, who is the co-founder and CEO of Piecemeal, who's on the technology side. And these gentlemen will talk about their companies in just a second, and we'll get into this. I have 3 topics that we really want to focus on, so you have an idea of what we're going to get into. We're going to be talking about best practices when it comes to raising and growing. So again, you have some better questions to ask of your producers, of your vendors, of your staff and team to educate yourself. We're going to talk about logistics and transportation, how we actually get access to these products. And finally, we're going to talk about the market value, how we understand how much we should be paying and investing in purchasing certain products, and how much then that means the market will bear for the value for your guests. All right, that was a lot. Appreciate everyone for watching. Please give us comments and questions throughout. We'd love to engage with all of you. Gabby, please tell us a little bit about Fireside at 5, who I'm grateful to have the opportunity to collaborate with on this series.
Absolutely. We are just super excited to now endorse Chat 3 out of 5 of this series. A little bit about Fireside at 5. We started as a company just about 4 months ago, sort of in the midst or the beginning of COVID. And it was really a platform for the community to speak to one another and kind of talk about what has been going on in their personal and professional lives due to COVID. It was equal parts stimulating, social, cathartic, and people can really had the chance to talk about anything across any industry. And as of today, we have hosted 75 different chats across 20 plus industries. And it's really evolved into more of a platform to amplify the voices of industry leaders and to support their current projects. And so, of course, Jensen, that's where you come in. We have collaborated with Jensen in full support of his Paragon Pillars and understand that this platform can help Jensen and Best Served Podcast really facilitate those important conversations surrounding the Paragon Pillars and get the right people involved. So again, we're just super, super excited to be a part of this and know that this is going to be a fantastic chat.
Indeed, it will. All right, let's get into it. We came to hear these gentlemen speak. It's time for them to speak. Justin Brunson, many of you will know from Old Major and Royal Rooster. And how many restaurants have you had? Too many restaurants over the years. And now really focused on River Bear American Meats. Tell us.
I made it out.
You found your way out of the restaurant industry mostly, right? I'm
Most
fascinated
likely.
because you're going to be our connective
Yeah.
tissue. You have been looking at the supply chain in a very different way now as a producer of cured meats, and I'll let you talk about the company. You also understand the restaurant business inside and out. For better or worse, you understand it inside and out. And so talk to us, though, first. River Bear American Meats. What can people expect from that company?
So River Bear American Meats is a USDA meat processing plant. We further process. We make deli meats. We have a line of deli meats, sausages, bacon, Italian salumi. We also dry age beef and have a small, very well curated beef and pork program.
I like it. Okay. For you, making the transition, why? Tell us why. Why did you go from the restaurateur, the chef owner, to the model of having a charcuterie, a salumi, a deli meat company?
I don't know. I'm kind of a meat guy. Even when I built Old Major, it was really about making salami. I mean, I built that restaurant to teach myself how to make salami because I couldn't fly anywhere to get taught, or I just couldn't do that. So I built a whole restaurant to make salami in, and I mastered making salami there. And I've had so many people ask me, how, I wish I could buy this. I wish I could buy this. I wish I could buy this. I was like, maybe I should look into a meat processing facility. So it took me about 5 years to get one up and going, but we finally did. And I mean, we're already building on another 4,000 square feet a year into it.
It makes sense from the restaurant mentality to invest $1 million into teaching yourself salumi versus a $5,000 class. Totally makes sense.
Well, there are no classes. I mean, at the time, like I called all over the country, and people at that time weren't really into sharing that information. So I built a kegerator dry box at my buddy Red Abel's house. He's my HVAC guy, Abel HVAC in town, and he built me a drying cooler, and I fermented in my closets at my house and figured out how to do it, and then moved it all over to the restaurant.
He's a pirate. I hear it. All right, Mike Calicrate down in Colorado Springs. You also kind of are a connective tissue where you are on the ranch, right? You have 2,500 head of cattle, and then also you have the storefront and are going direct to consumer. So you're pushing yourself kind of vertically integrated as well. So talk about what Calicrate Cattle Company and Ranch Foods Direct is all about.
Well, 20 years ago, I decided I didn't like the business I was in, and that's feeding cattle for big meat packers. And so I started Ranch Foods Direct. I had filed lawsuits against the big packers. We worked on legislation to try to get them to compete and restore a fair marketplace for livestock producers. Figured that wasn't going to work. And I have a 12,000 head feedlot in St. Francis, Kansas, which we'll produce about 2,500 cattle a year out of now. So it took a whole different tact, direct to the consumer, high quality, no performance enhancing drugs, Angus cows, Wagyu bulls, and just decided to go direct. There's never been more money in the food business. It's just that it's not going to the people who produce and do the work.
Yeah, it's gone down to, in the 70s, the big five had like 20% of the market. Now they have 80% of the market. So I'm interested in that. You were working with the big meatpacking and you said you weren't happy with your job. Why? What was it about that you wanted to find a different path?
Well, I had an independent feedlot, so I fed cattle and I sold them to the big meat packers. And when I started out in 1978, I had as many as 20 buyers I could sell to across the, Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, Texas, and Oklahoma. And by the time I quit feeding cattle for the big packers in 1999, I had only one meat packer I could sell to, and he decided he didn't want to buy my cattle anymore. Because I had sued IBP in 96 with a group of cattlemen, and that was winding its way through the courts as a class action. And I was speaking out aggressively against the abusive market power of their monopoly, basically, their concentrated cartel monopoly. And so I just decided to go a different route. Really disliked the business because you just couldn't make money. I mean, every time you turn around, you were losing a couple $100 a head. And it'd take you, 10 turns of cattle to get the money back. I mean, it was just, I just decided it was a fool's game I didn't want to play in anymore.
Yeah. And You ventured out on your own. I much respect for that. Ben, for you, Food Maven, tell us a little bit about Food Maven. You're on the distribution side. When did Food Maven start for you? And then kind of like, what is the ethos and the approach of Food Maven?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me on. Food Maven started around the idea that 40% of the food that gets produced ends up getting thrown away. But somehow at the same time, 70% of farmers are in the economic red zone. You've got 42 million Americans who are food insecure, and this is all generating $200 billion in economic loss. And so what can you do to help to capture some of that lost food? We started back in 2015, 2016, more focused on as a pure food rescue, and realized that there's a lot of opportunity to do more further up the distribution channel. And so that's where we really kind of settled on our model, which is we work with everybody in the distribution channel, whether that's farmers and ranchers, processors and packers, manufacturers, other distributors, and even retail, that anytime they have food that they can't move, that we help take that in, get it up onto our marketplace and in front of our buyers in food service, independent grocery retail, and direct consumer customers. And that way they have access to perfectly good food at a great price on it, a lot of times up to 30% off market. And ultimately you end up with a solution that's good for profits, people, and the planet. Profits, because for the suppliers, we're getting them rescued revenue and helping avoid disposal costs. For the buyers, they, again, get a great value product at a great price and help to do something that builds their brand around sustainability. If we can't sell the product, we donate it on behalf of the sellers. So we have a goal that 20% of the product that we bring in, we donate and support hunger relief. And then ultimately, we're focused on trying to keep this food out of a landfill and make sure that all food is used with good purpose. So start here in Colorado, serve the pretty much the whole Front Range, and recently expanded down to Dallas-Fort Worth as well.
I saw that. For you, your interface on your website is very different because it's not just consumer facing, it's not just wholesale facing. There's multiple interactions. The UX is very different than a lot of different platforms. Why was it important for you to be a multi-stop shop when it came to like your website specifically?
Yeah, so originally it was the whole focus was it's about bringing people together, right? Sellers, buyers, and for us, the nonprofits as well. And so that's why you kind of had a different portal for each of those. And then recently with COVID, we added a part of going to direct consumer as well, because we had, so many of our partners on the food service side were shutting their doors or temporarily or permanently, and we had access to product, and we had a lot of folks on the consumer side who couldn't find it, right? They couldn't get access to chicken when they go to the grocery store or to ground beef. And we were able to help solve that for them, at least in the short term. So we'll see whether or not that's a long-term piece of it, but at least for right now, it can, again, help us make sure that all food's used with good purpose.
Understood. Christopher, for you, folks on the technology side, super fascinated as we, Justin, sorry, I'm going to throw you under the bus, but Justin, was like, God, I hate technology. He was struggling to just figure out how to get onto StreamYard. And I was like, you know what? We're cooks in the kitchen. A lot of times we make things with our hands. And this seems as alien as an alien. And so I think I'm fascinated in ways that we create an opportunity for, I mentioned the UX, the user experience, to be as seamless as possible so that cooks in the kitchen can utilize the efficiency of technology. So we'll talk about that a little bit. For you, when you think about connecting the dots, really, that's what I've gathered is like you want to make as little friction, as short a distance between the buyer and the seller. Talk about your company and how you've kind of worked around that challenge.
Sure. Well, also for me, thanks for having me here. Really excited to find out what Ben, Mike, and Justin are doing. Really exciting stuff there. So Piecemeal is our market network. Fancy term for saying we want to connect different people, right? And just like Justin, I spent my entire life in the restaurant industry. I started in the kitchen, spent 6 years in the kitchen, worked as a bartender, worked as a general manager, worked for chains, worked for independent. And then I started consulting in 2010. And I was like, I'd use some really good tools when I worked for some chains, but I didn't like their practices, kind of like what Mike was talking about before. Yeah. I was not comfortable with some of the stuff I saw as I worked for them, but they had good tools to manage though. So I said, I saw the independents had nothing, and then the chains, the small chains had nothing, but the large chains had all these systems. I had a great idea in 2010 for an integrated platform until it took me 8 years to meet the right partner. And I met my partner Oz in 2018, who's a developer and a restaurant owner. So he understood what I was talking about. Because when I talked about what I was trying to do with tech people, they would run away. Like they would they'd tase me, pepper spray, and they'd run away. But I wanted to create a simpler tool for people that, like me, like maybe Justin, that were like, I hate tech. I hate platforms that are out there. Legacy software are complicated. You need a full-time consultant to manage them. The cool thing about what we do it's pretty much drag and drop and create recipes, right? So there's a bit of onboarding work, but we created a platform for restaurants where you can do your inventory, your menu engineering, all that costing and stuff, your purchases and your scheduling all in one place. But another example, you know what's really boring about an inventory? You need to enter all your invoices by hand. A restaurant will spend 2, 3. My wife runs a really large steakhouse here in Montreal. They spend 5 hours a week entering invoices. Well, my partner created an OCR. His name is Oz, so we call him the wizard, obviously, in-house. But we take pictures of invoices, and that uploads and in real time changes prices. So imagine if I change the inventory item, changes the recipe price and the dish price, which we don't have time to do in a restaurant.
Yeah.
I've worked in consulting with people. They hadn't done their costing in 3, 5, 7 years. I mean, the cost of food has gone up 30% in that time. So they're not profitable. I love your Paragon pillars and especially profitability. You know, you talked about the 142 lines on the P&L. I want to help you control 2 lines. Food costs, labor costs, which is usually what, 65% of your costs. I want to help you have a
costs,
to do stuff like that. Now you can count we all hate this too, right? You can count your inventory in here and you can have 5 people counting their inventory in here at the same time. And I'll show you how to do one with 10 items. So that's what we're doing. But in that process, and excuse me for making that 2-minute answer way too long, but I'm very excited about this conversation. But we want to connect to the supplier and help that line because there's no transparency in prices on the other side. And there is monopoly, like Mike was saying, and there's lack of traceability as far as the origin. You mentioned local, organic, fair trade. How do we there's a lot of stuff we can do anyways. And I'm excited about the rest of the conversation for sure.
Yeah. What does OCR mean?
Sorry. Yeah. Me with the big terms and I'm not the tech guy.
Yeah.
It's optical character recognition, meaning, you know, when you deposit a bank check
right.
with a picture, well, now you can do that, but take a picture of an invoice. And thanks for pointing that out. I try to be the guy that does not use tech words because I'm not a techie. But yeah, so basically with a picture, you can basically upload your information in real time. So it's
this is why I want to have you and Justin on. If Justin can do it, we got it. Industry-wide, absolutely, yeah. I'm
like anything, there's a learning curve. Justin might throw me the phone the first few times, but that's all good.
That's what we need. We need
a lot better with a knife than this thing.
yeah, for sure. I prefer you hit me with a phone than a knife, though.
Yeah.
But
all right, so we're going to get into these 3 topics now. Want to start with growing, raising practices. We hear these buzzwords now in food. We hear organic. We hear biodynamic. We hear now restorative agriculture. Talked about the term with a lot of different people recently, especially if meat prices has gone up and people are looking for the cheapest, which means they may be cutting corners that they didn't before. Country of origin labeling is an interesting thing as well. So I want to dive into that. Mike, I want to start with you because you've been out there like really working hard for the last 20 years to fight against a lot of the lack of transparency. I think that word has come up a couple times. So I want to start with you. Let's talk about a couple of those terms. What are the 3, 5 terms that you want restaurants, chefs to be thinking about to ask the question to get to the best practice that they need? What are a couple of the terms, and give us some understanding of what we need to be thinking about?
Well, I think the newest term that I think is the most meaningful right now is regenerative.
Yes.
Some people want to call it restorative, but the industrial food system is an extraction model of food production and distribution. It is linear. It's not circular. And so let's get back to fixing what's broken. We've had a complete supply chain failure with COVID exposing it. It's always been there, but COVID really, really caused it to break. It's a very vulnerable system. It's a fragile system. Small things can make it fall apart, like workers getting sick. And so regenerative is an important word. I've been through the natural, the sustainable, the family farm raised, the humanely raised, the antibiotic hormone free. All that stuff has been captured by the big corporations, whether it's Cargill, Tyson, JBS, Marfrig, Smithfield. They've all captured those terms and essentially defrauded the consumer. We've never seen more food fraud in my lifetime than we have today. And so I think I like the word regenerative because we do have to fix what is broken right now. And I like to talk about fixing the soil. When we lose our soil, we lose our civilizations. It's throughout history, it's been proven time and again. And as I fly in from St. Francis, Kansas every week into Colorado Springs, I'm seeing, the topsoil of Eastern Colorado is gone. we are close to the breaking point on being able to even produce the food anymore because of the way that we've farmed and ranched. And so I like that word restorative. I think and regenerative, and it's all about bringing health back to the soil, health back to communities, health back to our food. Food that's nutritionally dense and good for you.
So, Mike, very specifically, I'm a chef at a restaurant. Can I ask of my meat producer, are they applying restorative, regenerative practices? Is that something that actually has like a roadmap to it? Is it something that is a philosophical approach? Like, get granular. Is it something that I can ask of you and you'd be able to tell me that you are or are not doing that?
Yeah, you can ask the question. I mean, regenerative is pretty well defined. People know what that means, and you can certainly look it up. But the deal is, you're not going to buy it through your existing suppliers. Cisco doesn't sell it. I mean, when you've got producers like Will Harris, Greg Gunthorpe, myself, there's others that are the regenerative type suppliers. They don't sell through existing channels. They go around more direct to the consumer if they can. And of course, now the restaurant piece has really been hurting. And so a lot of our volume has dropped off. We do have restaurants that we sell to that are totally on board. And one of the key points about a restaurant, they're on board if they'll let you train their staff, if they'll allow their staff to visit your livestock operation so that they can see it firsthand. And then they're your policeman. They're the policeman at the table. They're the policeman at the back door when the stuff comes in. It's really great. And then if you're able to communicate that to your customers, you fill seats. Even though your food cost may be a bit higher, although it doesn't need to be. Like I said, there's never been more cost in food to the restaurant or the consumer. And I think the point is to just make sure those dollars are flowing back to the people who really do the work and invest the capital and take the risk, and that's the producers. And we've got to figure out how to treat these workers better as well. So it's a matter of redistributing the wealth. And when you look at a Cisco, for example, their last 5-year return on equity is over 40%. And you're trying to make 19% in a restaurant, well, you better squeeze those guys a little. In fact, that's not option with Cisco is don't deal with them.
Restaurants don't make 19%. They're lucky to make 10 now.
Yeah. That's why we're shifting that model. So here's exactly what we're talking about. And Justin, I want to come to you on this because there's a couple things that Mike said that I think really resonate with the restaurant chef especially. Yeah. What we're looking at is the ability to invest in a company and a product and a process that you believe in within your restaurant. Now, if you look at the 142, whatever that is, line item, you recognize that if your goal is 19%, you have invested a certain amount of money and a percentage into, let's say, regenerative, restorative agriculture practice around your beef, for example. Now you just know that you need to find the opportunity to shave 0.25%, 0.5%, 1% somewhere else. Where and how can you find that investment? Is it an efficiency with Christopher's company or others like it? Is it finding ways to have your landlord or anybody else invest a little bit more in, because we've seen that restaurants are the pillar of your community from a cultural standpoint and from a commerce standpoint. So all in on that. Needed to rant real quick. Justin, for you, there's a couple things, the training of staff, like getting them out to the ranch, that makes a big difference. You've always been somebody out there training, bringing in people, doing classes. I know you've had classes for your staff that other people from other restaurants have come to, right? You've always been very open with the training side of it. So let's talk about that. Let's start with the restaurant, and then I want to get into River Bear Meats, what you're doing there. But
I just think, always when we were in the restaurants, it was always about training our staff and other staff. Like, hey, we're going to go do a farm visit today. Who wants to come learn at the farm? Or, hey, we got these awesome chefs coming in from Montreal. Who wants to come over and check these guys out, watch them cook?
Little Joe Beef action.
Yeah, then we had Marco and those guys down here. Or hey, we got a wine class or a whiskey class. And it brings restaurant and community together. That's why we've always kind of reached out to others, just other than our staff, because it's good just to educate people and get everybody together too.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I really want restaurants to listen to that. It seems like a little thing, just doing a pre-shift training or showing somebody how to like butcher a pig. It makes a big difference, and it's an investment in the education, which then that sous chef later, when they open their own restaurant, is already committed to that ethos because it was instilled in them. So I do not want to undervalue that. Now let's talk about a couple of the other things that you're looking for when you're sourcing. Now you're sourcing, I mean, you used to source a lot of meat at Old Major, right?
Yeah.
You're now sourcing a completely different amount of meat, 20,000 pounds a week or whatever. What are some of the things that you're looking for when you're trying to find kind of the best producer for your needs?
So right now, I mean, I found some medium-sized producers to get started with, and now I'm out doing farm visits. I was in Iowa 3 weeks ago. I was in South Dakota 2 weeks ago. So now I'm going after folks to talk to folks to just grow for us. I got a group of Amish farmers in Iowa that are growing GAP 3 certified heritage breed hogs for us. It's a cross. I got GAP 3. So no gestation crates, turnaround farrowing crates, no antibiotics, no hormones, outdoor access. I mean, it's perfect story pork, non-GMO feed as well.
Okay.
So, I'm really looking for not only good farmers, but people that take care of their animals. Like, I don't ever want to use a farm that uses gestation crates ever. That's something I don't believe in at all. I wouldn't treat my cat that way or my dog that way. Why would I want to?
Literally just jumped up behind
you. I saw him. He's right there. Why would I don't want to? I mean, I don't want to torture an animal just so I can eat. And I know that we have to have factory farms in this country to feed everybody, but that doesn't mean I have to eat that stuff. So I'm always looking for a higher level of animal humane treatment. And go out there and meet the farmers. Go do a farm visit and see what's really going on. So that's what we're doing with River
What you just said is important. Go out there and meet them. Mike said it. I think we're going to echo that again and again and again, because somebody can slap an organic label on something. You go and see the practices. Instantly when you hit the soil, you just see those practices. And I think that's
JBS antibiotic free. No way, not in my mouth.
Well, Mike loves that one. All right, Ben, for you now on the distribution side. All right, now you're bringing these products into market. Talk about for you some of the things that you're looking for. What are some of the types of practices that you're looking for from producers, from sellers, to be able to bring those to market? What should we be looking out for?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, the key thing is, and Mike hit on it a bit already, it's transparency and education. Right? Folks actually understanding, okay, what's a certification? What's a third government certification? What's a third-party certification? What's just a process verified claim? Or what's even just a marketing claim? So that they can really start to make those decisions for themselves, right? So because we're focused on the food waste part of it, we're getting stuff that a lot of you probably wouldn't want to necessarily take on it, but we still want to make sure it gets used to a good purpose. And the key to that is the transparency part. So folks understand exactly what they're getting, what the supplier is claiming on it, and then making sure that there's that pricing transparency with it as well. So folks, aren't undervaluing a lot of what, is really important stuff that does great stuff for our planet and for the animals that are helping to feed us, that's not being undervalued. Because that is, I think to the point that has already been made, that happens because there isn't transparency and you're not comparing apples to apples. You're getting undercut from some mass-produced product that a lot of folks wouldn't want to use. And so we just want to make sure that our buyers always have that understanding and education. And then the other part, start to pass it down to the consumers, because as the point's already been made, they're going to be the ones that ultimately drive a lot of the change. And for them, understanding what's important, how they should value it, they're going to be willing to spend more money on that. And we've seen that in consumer trends over the last couple of years.
So for you, you mentioned a couple of things. Is it marketing? Is it process? Again, I'm restaurant guy. I'm in the kitchen. Like if you don't bring it and put it in front of me and tell me that's the thing I'm supposed to buy, I might not ever ask another question. And so we're at the mercy of whoever is selling us whatever they're trying to sell us, and who knows what the incentive or motivation on the back end of that sell through is. So what are those questions? You mentioned a couple of those things. If somebody walks in my back door, distributor from Food Maven, from anywhere else, and says, here's a product I have that I want to sell you, what are some of the questions that I need to be asking of that person to find out, does this align with my beliefs, even though I might not have the time to have all of the education resources to know, is this or is this not? Like, give us a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing to always look at it is any of the claim-based stuff on there something that's either a actual USDA certification, which there isn't that many of on it, surprisingly. A lot of stuff that's stamped USDA is actually what's called process verified. And a lot of times all that means is that they've handed over a piece of paper to the USDA and said, yep, we do this stuff. But to the point Justin made, nobody even goes and walks the ground to see if that's actually what's happening. So understanding, okay, is it a government certification that's actually certified? Or is it a third-party verification that I trust, right? There are some very good. GAP was mentioned as one. If you're on the seafood side, MSC is a pretty good one. Understand what are those good third-party certifications that you trust. Because as the point's already been made, a lot of the other claim stuff there, if it's not backed by one of those, is often it's a marketing label, right? There's no actual proof behind it. And you want to make sure that you understand what you're looking for on those things. And then that also, too, that's priced accordingly.
Okay. And just for everyone's knowledge, you'll see and have seen Andrew Parr popping up. Andrew Parr works behind the scenes super hard on everything that's Paragon Pillars. And he's curating some articles on his Medium channel where we're aggregating massive amounts of resource. So look out for us sharing that as well, because some of what we're talking about, people are trying to scribble down notes. You don't have any idea what we're talking about. We're going to share that information. So we're trying to create a toolkit, a roadmap for you. So we appreciate the sharing that's going on, and just know that you don't have to know what to do coming out from this one chat. So just take a deep breath, everybody. We're going to help figure this out long term, because we're all in this for the long term. Absolutely. Christopher, for you, let's talk technology a little bit more. I think it is a massive opportunity, because once you figure out the model, you can scale technology infinitely. I think it's one of the things that's super important. Also, there's huge challenge. We joked about it a little bit, but it's real. Adoption is where most things fall apart. Getting cooks in the kitchen, people in the restaurant, to actually use the app when they've spent 15 years of their career scribbling down 5307 is my code for beef, and I write that down 5 different times and then I put it in. Or, my sous chefs used to lose a lot of invoices because they just didn't want to put them in at the end of their shift. So technology, when it comes to some of the ability to be able to communicate and educate and adopt, give us a couple things that you guys are working on, some things that we need to know on the restaurant side.
For sure. I think technology has often, in most cases, been built by people that were close to the restaurant business, but not in the restaurant business. I could name you a bunch of tools out there and of platforms and things. His brother had a restaurant, his sister had something. They saw an opportunity. I had somebody tell me, when a guy walks in from a tech company and I say, oh, could my runner do this for me? And he's like, what's a runner? He's like, you don't understand my business. How can you build a tool that works? So we're pretty excited, because we're a small team, but everybody, and it's probably not going to be like that as we grow, but everybody on our team has worked most of their life in restaurants. I have a guy who was a chef in a bunch of restaurants, super famous steakhouse here in Montreal. Our customer success manager spent the last 10 years working in Montreal, Paris, the US, Connecticut, and some nice hotels and stuff. My partner was a family restaurant owner. I've been in the business 27 years. So we understand. And I had a user tell me 2 weeks ago, you guys are geniuses. I'm like, no, we're not. We're just really good at making, actually my partner might be a genius, but not me. But I built the tool that I wanted to have as an operator. But she said, what I mean by that is that you can tell it's been built by restaurant people, because all the other tools I've tried don't make sense. And this one, we understand that the person who built this has run restaurants, and the guys who are behind this and the gals that are behind this understand how it works. So I think there's that. So it needs to be simple. And how do you do adoption? I mean, anything takes an effort to change, for sure. But I read a stat last year that blew me away. It said 80% of money invested in tech in restaurant is just to upkeep old systems. So nobody has tried to come up with a new way. We're trying to build the system and the market network for the next 50 years. Everything is still in the food and supply chain has been done the same way for 50 years. Mike was talking about the big guys. They send you, the old guys coming in and saying, we're going to do a deal. We're going to lock you a price for the next, 6 months. And then you can't negotiate and get a price somewhere else. And I'm like, there's no transparency in pricing. I mean, I could tell you through some AI that we've done in Montreal that one of the largest suppliers had AI models so you can modulate prices in real time for smaller restaurants and depending on how they were selling and stuff like that, which I find to be completely stupid. And that's one thing that we want to change. But I think there is a need for simpler tools that are adapted to today's tech. Like I was saying before, I shouldn't have said OCR, but taking a picture of your invoice, so your guys, your sous chefs, Jensen, at the end of the night, take a picture, boom, it's uploaded, it's linked to the items, and we've changed the prices and we've done it. So I think tech needs to help us go back to what we're good. For you guys, chefs, it means being in the kitchen, teaching your people, teaching your team, and you all mentioned education. I think it's super important. And the educator in me, I spent the last 10 years coaching and training people. Go out and show them. Don't assume that your team knows stuff, and show them stuff, because I don't know if I think it's a Canadian certification, but even the last high-end restaurant I worked in, we had ocean-wise fish. Okay, so it's basically making sure that it's not farmed, that it comes from renewable sources and stuff like that. But until they explained to us, and I went and asked the kitchen team what it meant for us to go and explain it to the guests at the table, well, make sure your team know what that means. If you're going to spend more for a quality product, make sure your entire team knows, and then they feel comfortable, telling the guests, educating the guests, and then the guests, when they go somewhere else, maybe they'll ask for, is this sustainable? Is this ocean-wise? Is this whatever the certification is? But I think it's
we have to educate internally and externally. I want to talk technology on the flip side, the challenge that I've had as an operator of restaurants, as a chef over the years. There's been quite a few technology companies, especially in the last years, whose model was built in beta or early adopters from independent restaurants. And then at a certain point, when it went mainstream, when it hit the top of the curve, it priced out a lot of those small independent operators who helped build it and kind of were the backbone of it, proof of concept, to then sell it to somebody who's got 147 units. Yep. How do you address that? Because what you're talking about, I love, is it's something that restaurants are going to be able to use in perpetuity.
Let me blow you away with something that blows me away now. Piecemeal is free for restaurants to use. It's not a freemium where it's free forever. That's something that me and my partner, and I've even had contracts with some people that come on board that I said, you will never pay for this. He said, but if you sell it someday, then you guys, maybe in 5 years, somebody wants to buy you out. I said, it will be in the contract that restaurants can never pay for this. Now, and I don't want to go into our business model. We can as we pursue the conversation, but we are basically helping suppliers as well, because they don't have tools. And most suppliers, I'm not talking, the Cisco's that Mike mentioned are the big guys, mid-level suppliers serve 300, 400, 500 restaurants or food service operators, and they still take everything by phone or by text. I want to help them save time, charge them a fee on that transaction, and then that helps us pay for the whole market. Piecemeal can make money, suppliers can actually save time, and I don't want to go grab from their bottom line. I want to go grab from their operational expenses. Like one supplier we're piloting with right now, she had 4 people on the phone. We'll bring that to 1, maybe 0. And part of that money is going to come to Piecemeal, and we're just going to help them. Again, supply chain is not super advanced in tech as well, a bit more than restaurants, but not that much. So I don't want to charge restaurants. I never charge restaurants. So that's how we fix that, is that the other guys, I don't want to get techie, but I guess, cost of acquisition for new customers is super expensive. And the other thing for the restaurants, why they don't keep it, the price of the tech goes up, but it's also a nice to have in a lot of cases and not always a must have, right? We said before, they're complicated tools. So for the restaurant, where's the first place you'll cut? That reservation system, that tech system for your inventory and stuff like that, because you still need to buy food and you need to get employees in the door, right? So the thing for us is free was the way to go, and we're quite excited about how that can bring value to, obviously, the restaurant industry that we love so much.
All right, Mike, I want to talk a little bit to kind of the buyers in the restaurants right now a little bit. The expectation that you have for them, a lot of them are buying from Cisco right now. A lot of them are buying, commodity products and don't really understand it. They just see the price. They see the price of it, and they know that we're getting drilled in the head with, you got to be at 30% food cost or whatever that number is. And we're putting a lot of stuff on the plate, and it creates a huge challenge. And we're just so focused on that cost per plate. Let's talk to them a little bit. I want to talk about the value of that product. Why is it important, and what are the conversations that you're having specifically around that, the investment in the market value of a product from Ranch Foods Direct, say, or a small family producer versus the big conglomerates? Oh, you got your mic muted.
So thanks for that. So we don't sell to chain restaurants. We don't sell to big box retailers. We only sell to independents. And so their benefit in dealing with us is that they can tell their customers about it. And so when a new restaurant comes on board or a restaurant has something special they want to do, we'll put that out on our newsletter. We've got over 10,000 people on a listserv that we can promote that restaurant and what they're doing. And it's really helped fill seats. It's built that whole culture of that regenerative ag and knowing where your food comes from, humane treatment of livestock, all of that into the restaurant's concept. And so we don't deal with many restaurants that buy off a Sysco truck. They buy their meats from us, but they'll buy their other stuff from another company. But Sysco is very predatory. If we go into a restaurant that's dealing with Sysco, we'll offer a product and immediately Sysco will just undercut us. And of course a year later they're higher than us after they've kicked us out. But there's a lot of predatory practices with Sysco in particular, and and the other big ones are that way too. But if the independent restaurant can deal with the independent family farm meat supplier or produce supplier or whatever, then they have the opportunity to truly differentiate themselves and promote that to a customer base that honestly cares. And I think after COVID, there's going to be a whole lot more people care, because that industrial supply chain failed them. When they will never get that picture out of their head when they walked into that big box and all the shelves were empty.
Yeah. You know what? It was very jarring. I remember that for sure. What you just said at the beginning, I thought was very, very interesting. You're not just a producer. You're looking at yourself as a channel partner to the potential for marketing as well. That is a fascinating idea that I think we need to talk about a little bit more. There was a great movement, and Justin and I and a lot of chefs were like really big buyers and believers in it, of listing out the names of farms in the dishes themselves, or maybe in the end talking about those. And then it became a little bit white noise. Like it was just a listicle of companies that really didn't have depth or meaning, because we never went to the farm. It was a farm's name that came from Sysco, whatever that was. It lost a little bit of its teeth that it had at the beginning. For producers out there, I absolutely think this is something interesting to listen to. I don't know a lot of restaurants that have 10,000 people in their listserv or their MailChimp, yet you guys do and are really pushing that. Why was that important? And are restaurants understanding the value of that?
Well, it's important to us that the more people we can get seated in a customer's restaurant, the more meat we're going to sell, the more product we're going to be able to move through those channels. But it's also important to know that when a restaurant doesn't buy your product, they should honestly take your name off their menu. And this is a serious problem.
It's true.
We got an email just last week from a woman that bought a meal from Green Chef, and it wasn't good. And so she called us because she thought we were the meat supplier. Well, we were in 2017, and our video is still up on their website. And there is no way to get a hold of anybody in corporate after it's sold to HelloFresh. So now see, it's multinational, and now you can't get a hold of them to get your video off their website promoting us as their supplier. So this is a big problem. And so you've got to make sure that they're legitimate. And I would love to have a little class where we could coach the consumer on the right questions to ask. It might make the eating experience a bit unpleasant, but it actually isn't. It is kind of fun to work the restaurant and find out where does that Aspen Ridge beef come from? Well, it's JBS. It sounds good, but come on, people, let's get real.
I like it. I'm interested on the flip side. Again, I'm going to kind of like ask each of you guys a little bit of a critical question, because I want restaurants to really buy into what we're talking about. And restaurants, we've been sold a bill of goods so many damn times to the point that you're talking about. And we've been bad about it too. We've done the same thing. I've absolutely seen that on menus where it's like, that's not a product from that company. Maybe at one point it was, and now they're trying to siphon the attention or the credibility it gets. So it's on both sides. But I want to ask you, as somebody who's really fighting against the big guys, you're also in a business where you're promoting the consumption of meat, which then drives the demand for meat. And in our country is massive demand for that, which then drives the need for cheaper, faster, more production. How do you kind of grapple with the fact that like you're doing things thoughtfully and curating those things in a meaningful way for regenerative agriculture, yet also you're driving a demand for a meat product that then is leading to, and not by your work, but it's leading to people wanting more meat cheaper?
Who do you want to answer that, Justin?
Mike, sorry, you.
I mean, Jensen, excuse me. Well, Jensen, I guess if I didn't have access to the meat that I produce, or the meat that Will Harris produces, or the meat that Greg Gunthorpe produces, and there's others, but these are the guys that, I have your regenerative operations and slaughter on site and ship their product into commerce, I'd be a vegetarian. And so I really believe that we've got to stop eating the factory produced product. If you don't want it, don't buy it. What you support prospers, what you feed grows. With this idea of just eating more meat is wrong. You got to eat the right kind of meat. And if you've got somebody that's doing it right, support them. I mean, put all your meat dollars into those operations. Don't price shop. Stop this aggressive price shopping consumerism that the Walton family, Sam Walton, taught us 50 years ago. I mean, talk about shooting yourself in the foot or in the head. I mean, you've got to stop looking for the cheapest of everything, because it undermines and destroys an economy from the very roots of that economy.
Powerful stuff. Justin, for you, I mentioned it. We in restaurants have been so guilty of driving the overconsumption, of trying to get the cheapest food possible on the plate, putting so many things on the plate that we stress our ability to invest in the things that matter. Because if you have a nice piece of meat and 2 accoutrements, you might be good. But when you have 7 or 9 things on the plate because you're trying to show off, we've struggled with that as an industry for sure. And so how do you kind of grapple with that as now you're on the other side of the equation going, I really need people to invest more money in the deli meats. I need more people to invest more money in the bacon. Yet when you're talking about the products that, we're all highlighting here, it's hard to compete in that. So talk to the restaurant people. Why is it important for us to care about investing in where our products are coming from?
I always, when I was on the restaurant end of things, I always had the most expensive restaurant in town. I was the guy that
really did.
I brought the $15 sandwich with my deli, and then I brought the $300 steak at Old Major. And it's like, I don't know how else to do this 60-day dry age small family farm beef any cheaper. And I mean, it took tons of education to my staff so they could teach the consumer, our guests, on what they were actually eating. I think that's a huge thing, is the education of the staff to educate the guest, and then you get the guest, and once they get into it, they can figure it out. And when you're sitting here like, hey, this comes from this farm in this city, and it was dry aged in that cooler, people definitely get their wallets out. I mean, everything I've ever done has been really expensive. It's because I walk the walk. I've never been one of the bullshitters. There's plenty of those guys out there. I see it now that I'm on the sales end. Woo-hoo. Things I would like to talk about that I'm not going to.
Oh, go there to whatever degree you're willing, because that just piqued all of our interest.
I will, Justin. I'll help you out there.
So talk about that.
I'm new at this business, Mike. I still can't be a whistleblower.
Right? Look, let's go there for a second. I mean, everyone here has to sell a product, right, to restaurants. Yeah. It's an important thing to understand. So let's go there on the flip side then. Like, you don't necessarily need to call out all the bad practices. What are you focused on? Where's your team selling these products? What kind of restaurants? What are the conversations you're having? So the restaurants know, like, this is what I need to be thinking about when I'm investing in this product.
Yeah, so we sell to, mostly high-end restaurants and high-end delis, like people look at me and they're like, what do you mean you're baking $6.50 a pound? Everything we use is $4.95. And I'm like, well, I'm not Seaboard Farms. I don't own Daly's Bacon. So I can't do that. Like, we're buying super high-end, small family farm, outdoor access, antibiotic free, like great animals. And our margins aren't nearly what their margins are, and turkey breast, like, I got this, we have a great turkey breast. I get I have Hooterites in South Dakota that grow my turkeys for me. They're antibiotic free, and it's 100% clean, no nitrates, peachwood smoked here in Colorado. I mean, it's a perfect story, but it's $5.99 a pound wholesale. And some restaurateurs are like, well, I can't do that. It's a $10 turkey sandwich. And I'm like, well, if you're not eating a $10 to $15 sandwich, what the hell are you eating?
What's the point?
The bread's $1 now. Like a good piece of bread for a sandwich from all the good bakers in the city made with real stuff is $1 a piece. And then you put your $3 worth of meat in there or $2.50 worth of meat in there. I mean, it's the consumer, we need to help change the consumer to get them out of the cheapest is best, because cheapest is worse and it's ruining the environment. It's ruining the economy. I mean, cheap sucks.
Yeah, I think it's a responsibility that restaurants, you have to take. You may not want to make the jump from your $10 sandwich that you've had that price for the last 7 years because you're scared that you're going to lose X amount of your regulars, and because you actually need to be at $14. You're putting yourself so behind that you have to start to cut in places like your human capital. And we're trying to pay people less money because we're trying to still be at a $10 sandwich. You have to invest in educating your guest. Absolutely. It needs to be something fundamentally that restaurants are really good at. And unfortunately, we're really bad at it. We need to own that. We need to figure out a way to move forward. Ben, to you, right? You talked about some of the pricing things that you're working on. Let's go there a little bit more. Restaurants need to invest more money in food. Hell, our country, we spend more money by percentage, less money, by percentage of our income than any other developed country in the world. We don't spend money on food. We just don't. So let's talk about the investment that restaurants need to make. The transparency that you talked about with pricing, where and how is that playing out? How does that allow restaurants to invest in food products that then they hopefully have an opportunity to sell at a higher value?
Absolutely. It's already been said a couple of times here that, traditional food distribution is built on no transparency, right? They want, if they can squeeze you for an extra little bit, they will, and let your neighbor pay less. And so I think that's one of the key things that has to occur, right? To create this efficient marketplace to match supply and demand, you have to have trust in the price and understand, okay, how can I compare those two things and get what I really want, right? That's a fit for my restaurant to do exactly the things that you all are talking about, which is invest in other areas on it if they need to, or invest in that specific food item. And so the hard thing is understanding how that comes together. So I love the stuff that Piecemeal is doing, anything that we can do to help to build that connectivity between, all the way from the farmer to where it's being used, and understanding what's out there is going to help us understand how to really price to market to that. And so I definitely think restaurants should be looking for where can they get that, right? Who are the people that I can work with, that I understand what their prices are, I understand why they are, how they're going to change over time on that, understand how that compares to market and what else we see, because that's going to be where they can start to make those other investments that you talked about in what's going to help set them apart. And the other part of it that I think it's been hit on a bit here, but that narrative side, right, of creating the narrative of who you're working with, what's the product that's going on your plate, why it's so important for the community to be part of it is really important. I mean, we believe that a sustainable food economy is a local food economy. The less distance that food needs to move, it's then cheaper to move, which means everybody values more on both sides, both from the farmer because they're paying less to move it, and for the restaurant because they're paying less for them to move it on that. So the more that we can do there are other ways that I think the restaurants can really start to identify opportunities to make investments and set themselves apart.
Yeah, Ben, to challenge you a little bit, I'm interested in the model that you have where basically a lot of times you're buying products that a producer may be long on, right? Maybe overstocked on, and then the ability for them to then bring that into market at potentially a lower price per unit because there may be a food waste loss. You mentioned the 40%. I'm fascinated in that because how can that or does that potentially feed the overproduction of that product to be able to create the demand for it? Have you run into that? How are you dealing with that?
Yeah, so we're working on when we're working with the impact product, it's almost always on a consignment basis. So what we're doing
what that means.
Yeah, so what consignment means is we're not buying the product straight out from the seller. We're taking possession, not ownership, and then we try to sell the product for as much as we can for the seller, and then we keep a share of the transaction. on it. So, really, when you look at it, it's the difference being is we're both incentivized to try to sell it for as much as possible on it, because in that case, both the seller and we win in that process. And the way I look at it is, this is product that's the money's already been put in, right? I mean, this isn't, they're not necessarily going off with their demand. Right now, they're going from when they planted their harvest, however many months ago, or when they started growing growing the animal. And so that money's already been put into the product. We want to help you get some return on it, on that. And we also believe that there's plenty of opportunity for that to still be used with good purpose in a way that everyone really wins on that.
How do you create the pricing for that product? Who decides the pricing? Is that shifting as the product gets longer and longer in the tooth, and the potential for that waste? Like, how does that work?
Absolutely. So that's a lot of what we built on the back end. And so we're looking at, okay, what are market prices? What are retail? What's commodity at? What are we seeing as a sell-through for that product? Is there a lot of demand? Is there not? Because what we care about is that we can sell it for you and that we can get you the best price possible. And then if we can't, and we know it's not going to, and it's getting to end of life, okay, let's donate that and support a hunger relief. And that way they still get the tax write-off because they've maintained ownership of the product. That's the technology that we've built on the back end.
Understood. Who are some of the outlets to feeding hunger that you're working with? Give them a shout out.
Yes, absolutely. So Carriage Hair down in Colorado Springs is a big one on it. One that we just recently, or we've done quite a bit with, is Pikes Peak Community Center. Now has been renamed, and they've been a big one with us. Volunteers America, Project Angel Heart here in Colorado on it. Exactly. A big shout out for Chef Brandon over there, who's been a good friend of ours for a long time on that. And it's great to see. We actually did an incredible one at Volunteers of America, where one of our chefs put together a custom menu based on impact product. That then they did this great meal, sit down service. We went out to all go serve, and got to see the folks that are normally showing up there have access to a gourmet meal, and seeing how that makes people feel more human and the change they made in their life was awesome on it. And so it's trying to do that again. We're making sure all food's good for you, used with good purpose, and it's something that's a win for the farmers, the ranchers, the chefs, and then ultimately the community.
And Ben, real quick, I want to throw this at you because I want the soundbite out there. I think there's going to be a lot more about it. Cooperative buying of restaurants, small independent restaurants, finding a way to come together, 25 restaurants to look at product potential. Have any of those conversations happened? Is it a conversation that can be had? Like, just give us 47 seconds of that, because I want to know where the potential is there.
Well, there definitely is, right? I mean, you've seen buying groups are, especially if you're working in the hospitality space or in the larger food service space, they do almost everything on that, and it definitely gives them, I think, a leg up on that. And so the opportunity for restaurants to do that, I think, there as well. Probably the bigger part, though, is the more you have that together, the more consistent you can understand, transparent you can be in what the demand is, the more that you can then help those farmers and ranchers, right? If they know, I'm not just trying to one-off go find 7 different people to sell to, because then they have to go find 7 Justins. If they have all those together, and now I can understand.
We don't even have one Justin. We just lost him.
Just scared them off. But they have that for those farmers and ranchers. So I think absolutely there's some good things to see in those co-ops.
Okay, great. I want to go around the table one more time as we wrap up, kind of parting shots from each of you, just last thoughts. One thing you want to get out there, again, for chefs, restaurant people to really be thinking about, to hammer the point home of the importance of asking questions to figure out where and how you have an opportunity to evolve your model. Christopher, I'll keep going around. I'll come to you. Christopher, what's some last thought you want to leave us with?
And last thought, well, just a note on all that conversation. I want to make 2 points because maybe I'm naive. I'm not from the supply side, but I've always been from the restaurant side. I quit working for the largest burger chain in the world in 2004. I was a multi-unit manager at 24 years old, running $1 million businesses, and I left because I read a book and I read an article that I think it was in Philadelphia, wherever it was, but it said that in poor neighborhoods, 60% of kids had their antibiotics from meat that they were eating in fast food. And I decided that day that I was quitting and that I couldn't do that because I couldn't sleep at night. So when we talk about educating ourselves, there's a lot of stuff we don't know. And I'm sure you guys could tell us stories. Mike, you could tell us stories, and Ben and Justin as well. There was an article recently here in Montreal. They tested ground beef in 10 different grocery stores, 6 of them had pork in it, ground pork, right? Because the price has gone up right now. They're trying to keep it down. And I'd read an article 2 years ago. They went to 10 restaurants or 20 restaurants and they tested the veal. And in over 60% of the time, it was a chicken or it was something else. It was pork, sorry. But there is a lot of fraud. Mike mentioned fraud before, and there is quite a bit. You were talking about organic not being organic or local not being local and stuff like that. There is quite a bit. And the last point I want to make about tech, what you mentioned, Jensen, about co-op restaurants getting together. Imagine if there was a platform where it was free and they could manage their restaurant on it. And then we could harness their buying power as we're connecting the suppliers. And they put all their invoices in, so it created transparency in pricing across the supply chain. And then we made it a win-win for everybody because we actually brought people that wanted to know more and we wanted to educate them and they wanted to educate themselves towards suppliers and mid-level suppliers. And why are a lot of products, they cost more to produce. That's why sometimes they're more expensive, right? Less volume. There's also no tech for them. The big guys have all the tech, and we're creating tools for the suppliers as well right now for the mid-level suppliers to do their inventory, to sell their products, to not be on the phone all the time or pay people to be on the phone so we can help reduce them. And maybe they can sell their stuff at a little bit without being cheap, at a lower price where it's more affordable for a restaurant to go and buy something sustainable or something locally produced. So that's kind of what we're working on, is we really want to create that and work with people like Ben and Mike and Justin and shorten that supply chain and give tools on both end and bring the tech so that we can all go back. Mike can raise better cows that are healthier, and Justin can make better deli meats, and the restaurants are willing to pay, and Ben and all that, we can save those vegetable and all those products from going to the garbage. And that we can connect all these people and harness their buying power so the big guys are not necessarily siphoning all the money. It's a $300 billion industry in North America. I think together, if we work and we use tech in a better way, not so that Justin wants to throw the phone in the kitchen, but we can use it in a better way to create a better system and to have a better industry altogether. I think we can definitely get there. And thanks, Jensen, for bringing the conversation forward.
Appreciate you. Mike, all right, for you, parting shots. What's something you want to leave us with?
Well, I'm really glad to hear what Christopher has to say. It's got me thinking. But it was about 20 years ago that I helped Eric Schlosser with the book Fast Food Nation. And I was suing the big meat packers, so he wanted to know what I thought about things. And I called Eric last year. I said, Eric, it's been 20 years. He basically wrote The Jungle of 2000 is what he did. And I said, Eric, it's been 20 years. I think you need to write another book. I said, the problem we have is Fast Food Nation woke people up, but it's actually worse now than it was 20 years ago.
That's true.
And I think the solution is to go back to your community and make it as good as you can make it. Stop searching the world for the cheapest of everything, and realize that when you buy the cheapest, you may not be paying the full cost of production, but as a responsible citizen, shouldn't you pay the full cost of production rather than externalize it? Rather than exploit the workers and abuse the animals and destroy the environment? Wouldn't you be a better citizen and a better person if you would pay the full cost of production? Not saying you have to pay too much, but we need markets again. We need competitive markets again, to where people can access those markets from both the production and the consuming ends. So my hope is that people will go back to their communities and help their neighbors and build those communities stronger. I think going forward after this last 4 or 5 months, people are going to be more willing to do that.
Really appreciate that. You all have me thinking and buzzing. That's what this was all about, to know that there's people out there that give a shit and are out there trying to do work and struggling through that, I'm sure, and making mistakes, but we're in this together is a euphemism thrown out there, but it's really, really true. And going to your community, whatever that is, however you define that, I absolutely am a buyer in that. Justin, for you, last thoughts, my man. What's on your mind? Did you freeze on us? The technology. Chris, are you IT as well? Can you help him out?
Maybe he didn't plug it in quick enough. I don't know.
Ben, let's go to you real quick and we'll come back to Justin. Ben, last thoughts.
So I think the biggest thing we talk about today is you've got to educate yourself, help to educate your friends, educate your partners, whether it's up the channel or down the channel of what you do business, so folks actually understand what they're buying, why they're buying it, and why it's important. And then the biggest part, all of us as consumers, we need to embrace regionality. We need to embrace seasonality. We need to embrace local, because our buying behavior has created a lot of this monster that is the current food system. and we can do better on that. And there is something that's great about not always being able to have something and having it be a special time. And so embrace that again and embrace the community because that's how we're going to make it through this together.
Really appreciate all of you. I'll let you guys go. I'm going to wrap up and talk with the audience. Thank you so much to each of you, the work that you're doing. We have a lot more conversations to have, but I'm glad that we could share this with people. So take care. Have a great evening, gentlemen.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Awesome. So much good stuff. You could just see how inspired everybody was. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to talk about. No way that we could touch on everything in an hour, but at least we got the conversations going. We got everybody fired up. We're going to share some more resources with you so that everybody can find a roadmap. You're going to have to make a decision for yourself, for your own business, for your own restaurant, for your own community. And just these gentlemen being able to speak on some of the works that they're doing, the things that they're thinking about, the places that they're spending money and investing, it really matters. There is an opportunity if we all invest smart money into the system of restaurants. We have seen, I mentioned at the onset, we've seen that restaurants are so much more than we ever imagined. They're not just a place to go dine. They're not just the place for the experience. They truly are a place that is the cultural epicenter of any community, as well as the commerce center, right? The days of the mall and the JCPenney and the Sears being the epicenter of commerce and creating foot traffic, and you just happen to have restaurants there. That's not the case anymore. People are going to restaurants and they are supporting the shoe boutique and the yoga studio and the salon because they are driving traffic. They're putting butts in seats. Now we recognize that every one of the 142, 117, 104 line items in the P&L operating budget of a restaurant need to find ways to invest in restaurants so that we have the longevity, the opportunity for the equitable, profitable, and sustainable model. Truly believe that. I'm grateful to everybody for the conversation. Check out Chat 1 and Chat 2. You can find those on the Best Served Podcast Facebook and YouTube page, as well as Fireside at 5 Facebook and YouTube page as well. You can check out Chat 1, which was on creatively investing in people, figuring out ways to get to that 75% model of employee retention and satisfaction. Chat 2 last week was on the restaurant operations. We dug into some of the places within marketing and line items in the budget that there's an opportunity for growth versus cut and control mentality. Next week, Tuesday, July 28th, 5 to 6 p.m., you're going to have kind of us diving into the four walls, how real estate can play a role in investing in restaurant models. And then we will wrap the 5-part series on August 3rd, I believe it is, Tuesday, August 3rd, with talking about legislature, how we can build a coalition to, again, figure out ways that we can creatively invest in restaurants because we understand that their tax dollars are huge drivers, and we need to invest in the opportunity for those businesses to be around a lot more than 18 months and shutting down because it is such a struggle for restaurants to succeed. That's all I got for you this week. Thank you so much. Thank you to the panel. Thank you for everyone for watching. Andrew Parr, Patrick Sullivan, Andres Benson, Rang Mang, I saw all of you throwing some comments out there. Really appreciate it, engaging, and thank you to the panel. Thank you to Gabby and Fireside at 5 for just being awesome. Appreciate you all. Have a great night. Cheers.